And we're
Awesome.
live.
Amazing. Amazing. Great to be
Yes.
live. Here we go.
Yes. Very exciting. All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Well, let's dive straight in. Good evening, everyone. And it's, everybody that's joining. It's wonderful to have you here. By all means, drop into the comments in the chat as we go. We're going to look at anything that comes up. And if we can answer them, we will. So we're going to keep an eye. But tonight really is the first of 3 sessions. This is going to be an uncensored conversation, right? We're going to be honest. We're going to be no fluff. This is about burnout, the cost of it, and actually what it takes to get the reins back at the end of the day. But of course, who the hell are we? So I would love to, Lisa, can you please just introduce yourself just briefly, and then let's start a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Lisa Hammett. I'm a certified PQ coach, which is a mental fitness expert. I am also a keynote speaker and trainer and a 2-time best-selling author. And my niche, or who I primarily serve, are leaders and executives in healthcare and HR.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, so I'm Skye. I'm the guy who coaches women in leadership. And so I'm certified coach, certified neurolinguistic programming coach as well. And I've climbed the bottom of the rung to the C-suite and everything in between, burnt out in the process. So in a nutshell, that's why we're here. Lisa and I are connected, and let's have an honest conversation about burnout. So
Let's do it.
I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off, right? And let's talk about what burnout is, and most importantly, what it's not.
Great.
And the best way for me is to go, well, what's the definition of burnout? And if you look at the WHO and you look at all the sources, burnout is an occupational phenomenon. It's not a medical condition. It's not a psychiatric disorder. It's certainly not mental illness. This is about being a syndrome that's resulted from chronic workplace stress that's not successfully managed at the end of the day. And we're talking about this. This can happen in various ways, but typically it's 3-dimensional. So you have energy depletion and exhaustion. Then there's mental distancing, negativism, and cynicism. And then we've got reduced professional sort of efficacy as such. What it's not, though, and this is, you might look at me and say, well, hang on a minute. You just said it was a result of workplace stress. It's not about stress. It's about unmanaged stress. Stress is the pressure with the expectation of relief. So burnout's happening when we don't get that relief, when the relief never comes. So it's not about being tired. It's chronic fatigue at that point. So there's the sort of like a complete depletion of your resources in many ways. So the interesting thing as well is, and you and I have had this conversation before, where we say, well, there were times where we were depressed or we're going in that state of depression. And actually, it's quite interesting because it's not about depression. In fact, the symptoms of the syndrome can look a lot like depression. So if you were to go to a GP, you might even be classified as you've got depression.
Yeah.
But actually, the drugs are not going to fix this one because you don't have a mental illness. This is about the workplace. This is about the system broken in your situation. And the most interesting thing I found about this is that if you look at the World Health Organization, they have the International Classification of Diseases, and burnout has its own code. And the brilliant thing about this, yeah, absolutely amazing. Amazing.
Wow.
And, the fact is, like, it's so prevalent that even they thought, oh, well, this is that moment in time. We're going to give it its own code. But the best thing about this is that it sits under problems associated with employment.
Wow. Oh, that doesn't
that's
occur
everything
now.
you need to know.
That's crazy. So what does that say about our corporate environment, or just not even corporate per se, just business environment?
It is, right? It's just the business environment. It's, I think we've been raised in a situation. I mean, I certainly came from a place where, you were told you put your head down, you work it out, you grind, there's grit, there's all of that stuff. And by the time you put all the hours in, you put the effort in, you will be rewarded. And I'll be honest, I climbed that ladder like everybody else my age. And, like slaved myself to it in many ways. And I'll be honest, wore the badge with a lot of honor, but that was the badge I got, the badge of burnout. And so I think it transcends all of, it doesn't matter where you are, because I mean, I've worked in small companies, I've worked in corporate, I've done, been in a sort of an academic type situation and burnt out. I've been more of a sales, product management type, burnt out there. I've been, head of operations, burnt out there. It's like, it doesn't matter. And they're all different sectors. It really doesn't matter where you come from.
Yeah, it's not discriminatory towards certain
organizations
or fields, although there are certain fields that definitely are more prone, but that doesn't mean that it's exclusive to just them.
Yeah. No, and for you, I mean, like, what have you seen in those fields though, specifically?
I just complete overall depletion and lack of support. You nailed it when you were talking about the productivity. It's they're measuring performance solely on productivity without any care of well-being. And especially for the people that I coach and speak to, in healthcare and in HR, they went into those fields because they had a passion for serving others. And they're just giving all of themselves. And then they're expected to perform and do everything, but they're not allowed to replenish. So as a result, they are completely depleted, not just physically, but emotionally. And they're just completely wiped out. I mean, it just gets to a point where you can just barely function.
Yeah. No, and it's to pick up on that, what I'm hearing, and it's certainly something I've seen, not just in myself, but in the clients I serve and all the rest, and really the world in general, when we talk about burnout and people who talk about it openly, because I think some people want to talk about it openly and they try to, but then they almost go, oh, but I might be labeled, right? And it's like, well, you might be labeled, you're right. But equally, if you're labeled as the person who goes, do you know what? Yes, I've been working 70-hour weeks. I have no respite. And that's the point. It's the respite, right? Mm-hmm. I talk about metabolizing your stress, right? And I have this, I've done a talk several times in different places where I introduce Gary. And Gary is a cockerel, right? And if you can imagine a disheveled cockerel, right? A cockerel with very, very little feathers on it, but still strutting quite proudly. And Gary's walking through the office, puffing his chest out, saying, hey, you know what, guys, I'm crushing it, right? But let's be honest, Gary's not okay, right? And that's in principle what it is, because Gary's not metabolizing the stress. There is no come down. And unfortunately, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. It's interesting you raise, obviously you've worked with HR, you work with, health services and healthcare. It's quite fascinating that that's actually where it was formally defined. Mm-hmm. So it was...
Actually during COVID. Yeah.
It was 1974. I think it was Herbert Freudenberger or somebody like that who was observing healthcare workers and went, and described it, went through the process and said, well, now we're going to call it burnout. Because that's what it was, and, it really was profound fatigue, headaches, sleeplessness, irritability, quickness to anger, closed thinking, all these characteristics that came out in that study. And basically the summation of it was that, well, sleep's not going to fix it.
No.
Drugs are not going to fix it. And that's the sad reality of what we face in a broken system.
So true. And a lot of it, it's environmental. It's not like the quick fix, like you said. You just can't go fix yourself. Go on vacation and everything's going to be okay. Well, yes, it's good to check out. And I'm not saying don't go on vacation. But if you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to disconnect for 1 week or a couple days or whatever, and I'm going to come back all refreshed and everything's going to be great. No, because you're going to go right back into that storm of stuff and you're just going to go right back where you are, and there's no way at that point for you to diffuse the stress, or as you say, to metabolize it. I mean, I know in my case, I mean, it took me waking up one morning and the world looked gray. And it was a sunny day. It wasn't like a cloudy day in the dead of winter. It just looked gray and there was just no color. And I just feel I had no emotion. I'm like, this is my life. And I knew at that moment that I had hit rock bottom. And that's when I just left, a 26-year career, which I don't recommend because it resulted in bankruptcy. But I share that because when we allow ourselves to get to that point, we make these, knee-jerk reactions, and it can have lasting consequences. So it's when did you know that you were not okay?
So yeah, I mean, it's a great question, isn't it, really? And I think we often restrict burnout to an occupational context.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately it's just not the case. And
No.
that's not just my experience or other people's experiences. That's like, there's research behind that too, quite frankly, and it goes from various different grades, but basically it bleeds into your personal life. It bleeds into your marriage, your parenting, your relationships, and quite frankly, it's not a coincidence, the nature of what this is. For me, my first burnout was quite mild, if I'm honest. And I can say that because the other two were quite severe in many ways. But for me, one of the key pivotal moments was in my second burnout. We're in COVID. I've got a 2-year-old daughter at that point, just bought a house, working in agriculture, so frontline. But now it's COVID, so meetings are tripled. On an MBA, a charter management thing, an apprenticeship, pressure and pressure and pressure and pressure. And, I'm going, hey, look, I'm crushing it. I'm Gary in this moment saying, I've got this. I'm good, man. I'm good. Like, there's no problems. And for me, one of the eye-opening things was, obviously at that time, I was trying to tick a lot of boxes. And I remember walking into a room, and it was a room filled with my family, my extended family, and everybody went quiet.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what's going on? And they were looking at me as well. It's almost like, what's going to happen? And I'm like,
is this an intervention?
I was like, this is a bit weird. And then everybody kind of carried on a bit. And that happened several times. And, the tipping point in my second one for me, actually, what actually got me, so you say you woke up gray. I lost my father to cancer during COVID, and I wasn't able to get back to the funeral and everything else. But when I got the news, I remember in that moment, everything just broke. And I remember being in the bathroom floor, and I had my wife around me and, trying to console me in that moment. And I just go, there was a wave of almost relief, as that there's this release of the system. At the same time, for the next sort of 3 weeks, there was just fog. And I'm trying to fight the fog. I'm trying to see through the fog. I'm trying to understand the fog in many ways and go. And I remember in that moment, though, as I was sitting on the floor, and, it's not self-pity or anything else. It's just a complete breakdown. And you go through that process. And I remember a sentence coming up to me going, "You're doing this for a paycheck?" And I was like, not anymore.
Yeah.
And it sometimes it takes that level. Now, look, that was my thing. It's not for everybody. I appreciate that. Like, as you say, like, hey, I'm not recommending you jump out of a career and go for it because it leads to bankruptcy, right? But the point is that there are gradations within burnout that you go through. And, my first one, I'd say, it's that chronic fatigue. It's whatever. The second one, I openly say with everybody, hey, listen, I nearly lost everything I love, and that matters the most to me. And I'm quite happy to be open and honest about that. At the same time, the third one came with shingles. So it was a different angle. The reality of this is your body is going to send the invoice. It doesn't matter what you think and feel about it. And if you think you're okay, if you feel you're crushing it, if you think you're in control, the reality is your biology is going to say, I don't think so.
Right.
Because it just
our bodies are pretty smart. Yeah, our bodies are pretty smart, and they'll tell us when it's time.
No, absolutely. So yeah, it's one of those, it's a fascinating state to be in, but if I go back and I think about, if we go beyond the occupational context of what burnout is and what it's not, obviously before you had your chronic burnout, because that's what it was, were there moments in time where you went like, oh, I'm just struggling a little bit, and maybe you even thought to yourself, maybe this is burnout, but it wasn't?
I don't think I actually ever, I was in total denial. And I was just so used to I'm like as you spit your drink.
That's good.
I mean,
like that.
I was in total denial. I've always been a hyperachiever, and it's just the grind and the industry. That's just what you do. You just churn and burn and churn and burn. And I'm like,
but
okay,
you enjoyed it, right?
Well, I did for a while. And then my body started to break down, and I was getting chronic migraines. And then I, was getting all kinds of like digestive issues. And in my 30s, I had to find a GI doctor. I'm like, that was fun. Yeah. Make sure I didn't have stomach cancer. I mean, just crazy stuff. But and then it's the lack of being able to focus. And I remember too, I have always considered myself a pretty confident person. I am not saying that I'm great at everything. I'm definitely not. But I definitely have strengths like we all do. And I have things that are opportunity areas. But I was always of the mindset that, you know what, I can do anything if I put my mind to it. I really can. And meaning, if I can't physically do it myself, then I know how to get the right resources around me to make sure that it gets done. So I had this confidence. My confidence just slowly evaporated. And I started to feel like an imposter. And I'm like, I can't do this job. What is wrong with me? I'm not qualified, and all this just horrible negative mind trash. And I became so negative at work. I was positive and I appeared strong and great, but I took it out on my spouse. And I came home and I was a nightmare to be around. And I mean, my husband even told me, he said, I love you, but I don't like you. I don't like being around you. You're a nightmare to be around. And he was absolutely right. And he's like, I don't care what you do. You have to quit this job. It's killing you. And, that was a part, obviously, of the decision, including everything's gray. I always felt like I was kind of a vibrant person and had good energy, and it's just this chronic depletion. Yeah. I was like dim.
You're vibrant now. You've come back. You're vibrant now.
Oh, well, thank you. I try to have good energy, but yeah.
But it's fascinating. I want to go back to actually how you started that, which was I was in denial.
Yes.
Right. I'm high achieving. I'm a high performer. I'm in denial. Right. So, but you say that now in that moment when you go, I was in denial. You didn't know you were in denial, did you?
No, I just thought, I can get through this. I'm just going through this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just push it down.
It's just another day at the ranch, right?
Exactly. It's part of the journey. Ignore it. Just ignore it. Push it down.
Yep.
And then the lack of sleep, which is just so huge. That's a red flag right there. Is the number one reason why individuals don't sleep is due to stress. It's not sleep apnea. It's not COPD. It's not other sleep disorders. It is due to stress. And
unmanaged stress.
Unmanaged stress. Yes.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, and stress, if you don't get good rest, it depletes your immune system. It causes your body to have high, cortisol levels, which
Yeah.
causes inflammation and weight gain and, the whole thing.
All of
We're
it.
not going to go into that, but
Yeah. And
it's not good.
And it's interesting because like I go back to like my journey through life and I say,
Mhm.
okay, well, when were you under okay, perspective says this, right?
Mhm.
What was relevant to you as a 7-year-old, you might now look at your own age and go, well, that was irrelevant. But the magnitude of what that was for you as a 7-year-old was still big. I
Mhm.
go back to then 16. What was relevant then was big. And even the 16
Mhm.
is going, well, the 7-year-old is irrelevant, but now this is really big. But then the 32-year-old says to the 16-year-old, well, that's nothing, right? And as you go through life, the experiences, the knowledge, all of it, like it it gives you that new perspective and makes those other things less, well, have a less magnitude, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
And I go back here. Well, when I was under severe stress, so to speak, how did I cope? What did I do? Were there mechanisms, whatever else? Now, I'm a physical
Mhm.
individual. I love to do physical exercise, albeit not doing enough recently, but we'll bypass that for the moment.
No judgment. This is a judgment-free zone.
and but the point is like I remember being at university, and at university you're under high stress because you're there, you're paying your bills, you do whatever else, and you're there to get a degree. You've got to execute, and because I'm a high functioning high performer, I don't want to just execute. I want to kill this.
Right.
I'm here to dominate.
Yeah.
I'm here for distinctions. I'm not here for anything. I'm not playing games. And that's like the mentality I had. And I go, well, okay, what was your outlet? Well, I played hockey. I did triathlons. I did, I had this ability to metabolize the stress, to get rid of the stress, to deal with the stress, but in a different way. And you say, well,
Mhm.
but you're still putting your body under stress doing that. Yes, but it's a different stress. Stress is not the enemy. Unmanaged stress and letting it build up absolutely is in that moment.
Yes.
You know,
You brought up such a good point, though. I mean, we're both clearly overachievers or hyperachievers, which
try to
positive
be.
intelligence calls it. And, that is one of the top character traits for people who have burnout is that hyperachiever thing, constantly pushing, pushing, pushing for excellence, productivity driven. Perfectionists are another one that are really prone to this. No, it has to be done this way, perfect, attention to detail, which we all know is a load of crap. And
Yeah.
then controllers. And a lot of leaders and executives are controllers. They have really challenging ability to just release, and because they're afraid, oh gosh, if I let go of complete control here, we're just going to fail and I'm going to look terrible and my team's going to fail. And they have this misconception that they have to totally be in control all the time, but that's not a good leader.
No, and unfortunately, it's not. And
uh,
the problem is like you could go down a rabbit hole of saying, yeah, there's the employee itself, and all these other parameters like the government and the third parties coming in terms of those parameters. And I think the thing is like I'll never shy away from it and say absolutely they matter.
mhm.
No, nobody's going to question the fact that there are external factors out of your control that negatively affect what you're doing. 100%. However, I would argue that in the deepest times of turmoil, there have been what I call the great leaders who have turned companies around in recessions and been
Mhm.
unbelievably successful. And I mean, I always recommend to people, if you've never read it, the Good to Great book. And it's such an eye-opening read in terms of understanding that leadership dynamic and what those people can achieve and what they do in those moments.
Mhm.
Now, understand that those leaders are very specific for a very specific moment, and therefore they're really great in that space. They're not necessarily always going to be great all
Right.
around,
Yes.
but it's embodying what it can give you. It's embodying what that means in that moment. And to understand that is incredible because what it gives you is the edge to say, hey, listen, I'm not perfect, right?
Mhm.
It's okay. I don't have to know everything. And even if my team's not up, well, ask the questions. What's not happening? What are these other things? Because if you don't ask those questions, you don't go down that road, what happens is you build the stress on yourself. And you build the stress and you start blaming yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole thing becomes a blame culture because you're like, oh, well, bah. And then before you know it, you're down a road saying, I've got chronic stress. Well, of course you have. You never gave a moment to breathe. What do you think was going to happen?
Yeah. That you didn't think.
Well, and that's the point. And that's the point, right?
That is the point.
So,
well, gosh, we're at like 25 minutes already. It's crazy. So let's wrap this up.
Absolutely.
What would you say in closing?
Well, I mean, obviously always a great conversation with you. Lovely to have a chat. You know, I think for me, it's just to say, you know, obviously burnout comes from several areas, you know, but most importantly, it's, you know, what I've certainly picked up from myself, my clients, yourself, our conversations is really that, you know, there are moments in time where you can feel like you're completely in control, but actually you're not. And it's an acceptance to know that that's okay. It's okay that you're not in control. You know, I think you must have had those experiences.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
We don't have time to go into that now.
Yeah. And I've had them too. And I think from that, you know, it is very much a case of saying there's no right, wrong, you know, left, right here. There is at that moment. Yes. And, you know, I think that pivots really nicely into the next session, which if everybody's online, you know, please join us next week. We're going to do this again, another 25 minutes. And, you know, that's really about, we're going to explore the hidden costs. You know, you've heard a little bit about our stories, a little bit about what we've seen, but next week is really about diving into what those hidden costs look like. So these are the moments in time that you think are normal or you maybe shelve that actually matter the most in terms of preventing this stuff from happening.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said. Well, I'm excited. So next week, same time, same channel, and we will look forward to seeing you all next week. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.